Hi friends! I'm Kelsey, thanks for stopping by my channel. Today I am going to be talking about just my reading stats from 2022. Through this video, I'll talk about some goals that I have based on the stats that I've looked at, but this is just your typical wrap up of like pages I've read, breakdowns of different reading stats. 2022 was a really good reading year for me. I think I read the most books I ever read in a year. I read 134 books, over 45,658 pages read, which is pretty phenomenal for me. My shortest book was Recitative by Toni Morrison, and it's actually shorter than what it's logged as. I listened to it on audio, but half of it is a foreword by Zadie Smith, and the other half is the actual story. And my longest book was House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. I'm sure a lot of people have that as their longest book this year because it was one of the more popular ones, and I loved it. My most shelved books were Pride and Prejudice, the annotated Pride and Prejudice. There's 6.3 million people who've shelved Pride and Prejudice. My least shelved was 10 Signs You Need to Grovel by Kelly Siskin. Only 1,100 people had shelved that. And that makes sense because that wasn't released at the time I read it. It's still not released, actually. I think it comes out on the 23rd. And I reviewed that from NetGalley. And I love Kelly Siskin. So for me, that was a great romance novel. My average rating was a 3.6, which is pretty good. I don't remember what my past year's average was, but I feel like that's a really good rating. And then my average book length in 2022 was 340 pages. I did not read very many long books this year, and I think one of my goals this year is to tackle some of my longer books. Like I have The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles I want to read. I have The Name of the Wind, Lord of the Rings books. Like I have a few chunkers. The Heart's Invisible Furies I'm gonna read this year. So I have a few chunkers that I do want to tackle and maybe make my average book length be a little bit higher this year. So we'll see if that happens because big books can be kind of overwhelming sometimes, and I find myself drawn to shorter books usually. So some more just fun stats. I use the currently reading podcast spreadsheet to log my books, and this logs everything like pub date, author, audiobook author, publisher, genre, people of color, and then like different own voices categories. Who recommended it to you? What mood were you in? Did you read it pre-publication? Was it an audiobook? Was it like, it tackles, there's so many stats. So I just grabbed the stats that I'm the most interested in for myself this year, and we'll go from there. I'm not going to break down everything from the spreadsheet because we would be here for hours. I just really like that spreadsheet. It also tells you like if you read your unread shelf or whatnot. So first I'm going to look at the star ratings. So this is just a bar graph. I gave, I think, one book 1 star. I gave 7 books 2 stars, 50 books 3 stars, at least 50 books. I feel like the math's not gonna add up, but it might because I'm just looking at the bar graph and not the spreadsheet right now. So sorry. I gave 22 books 5 stars, and then I gave like 48 books 4 stars. So honestly, that's a pretty good reading year. Like if most of my books are 3 stars or above, I picked good books this year. My fiction versus nonfiction, I read 88% fiction, 11.9% nonfiction. I would actually like to read more nonfiction this year. I don't feel like I read very much, and that makes me kind of sad. I do have a ton of nonfiction on my shelves that I do want to get to this year. So I would like to target more in the 20 to 25%, but that could be a big ask. So, especially considering this month, I don't have a single nonfiction book on my shelf, I don't think. So I would have to like really make that a priority, maybe reading 1 nonfiction book a month. This hair, thank God it's Friday. Just saying. And the last day of Vlogmas. I didn't even say that at the beginning of the video. It is the last day of Vlogmas, and I can say this has been fun, but also filming every single day and putting a video up every single day for 12 days was exhausting, and I will plan better for 2023 for sure. Like for sure. Okay, I digress, but let's keep going. Up next, my audience. So what were these books written for? 5.2% were new adult, 3% were young adult, just under 1% were children in middle grade, which does not surprise me. And honestly, if I logged all the books I read to my toddler, that would be most of my books probably, because we read like 1,200 books a day. So I don't log those because I'm logging something separately for him for kindergarten. And then 91% were adult. So although it doesn't shock me that for my own reading, I haven't read much children in middle grade, trust me, I'm getting children in middle grade, and I can I have Chicka Chicka Boom Boom memorized, Where Do Diggers Sleep at Night, so you know, I'm living my best life over here. The book sources, I got 20% were review copies, which makes sense for me. 1.5% were borrowed from friends. I had to pause for a second. 41.5% was from the library, and 2.2% were from other subscriptions. So that was the Fabled subscription that I did. I should do a separate category for book of the month, but I didn't. 2.2% were purchased in 2021, and then 30.4% were my own TBR. So 32.6%, because I would put purchased and own TBR in the same category. I must have just been tracking that differently. But 32% of the books that I read were own shelves. I would like that to be in the 50% category this year, as I'm really trying to prioritize the books that I own. I am an avid library user though, so that kind of will just depend. Let's see. The highest month for reading for me was March, and I read 15 books in that month. My lowest month was June, and I only read 6, but that makes sense because I was in Hawaii and we were on vacation for like 2 weeks in June. So I didn't read a lot, which that totally flies for what I was doing. But I still had high months in July and September too. I think 14 books each month. If I read 10 books in a month, I'm really happy with that. So that's honestly a great stat for me. So up next is the format of reading. So was this digital, audiobook, whatever. I read about 11% on my Kindle, 70% were in print, 15% were audiobook, multiple formats was 3%, so I read them in different formats like at the same time. I would like to read a lot more audiobooks this year, so if that number could be higher, that'd be great. But this, really, I don't place a lot of stock in this because how I consume it is how I consume it. So I'm not too worried about that. I just thought that was an interesting breakdown. And then we're going to go into pub date. I read 55.2% backlist, so that would be books not published this year. 43% were published in 2022. That's actually really high. Like, I'm kind of surprised by that because I feel like I'm more of a backlist reader, but whatever. And then 1.5% were books published in 2023. So those would be NetGalley books essentially, especially because I was prioritizing those towards the end of the year just because, I don't know, I'm getting like a huge drive to tackle NetGalley right now. So who knows what 2023 will look like. And then a breakdown as far as dates. Again, like I said, 2022 was a pretty heavy yearly breakdown for me because I think I read, 40 something percent. But then 2015 through 2021 would have been my next number, just under 60. I read one pre-1900, which would have had to have been Pride and Prejudice, more in the 2010s. None in the 80s or the 70s or the 80s. So maybe that's something I want to tackle this year. I don't know. I, again, don't really place a lot of stock in this. Like, I'm grabbing books that sound interesting to me. I would like to read more backlist, which would be books on my shelves, which would still skew in the 2000s and above probably. So that's not really the most helpful graph, but I did think it was interesting. And now, ooh, this one's fun. So reading by genre, I really just like this graph. So 33% romance. I talked about that in my romance reading wrap up. Not surprising. I love me some romance. Memoir and bio, 5.3%. Thriller, 6.8%. General fiction, 16.5%. I am shocked by the fantasy of 15%. And then you can see like mystery, classics, horror, historical fiction were all smaller. I would like to read more historical fiction this year just because of what's on my shelf. I have a ton of historical fiction and I haven't been reading that a lot and I'm just interested in that. So I would like to make that more of a priority. So now we're gonna look at own voices, gender, people of color, queer books, because I know I didn't do a great job of these this year. Like these categories specifically I would like to focus on this year. Author gender, I did do a great job on. I take it back. I did 85.5% women, 13% male, and then 0.7% other. So I would like that other category to be a little bit bigger. I know that like the scope of what I read, that number won't ever be huge, but I have a few books by trans authors I would like to hit this year, and I just would like that to be a little different. And then people of color versus white authors. Again, white authors dominate and people of color. So 79% white authors, 20% people of color. I definitely would like that to be more even. And I know, again, like my bookshelves probably don't reflect that, but at the same time, I do know I've been buying a lot more people of color books. So that's a priority in this year as well. And then queer authors would be the last one. This I truly did terrible at this year. So 94.8% were non-queer authors and 5% were queer. So I would like that to be up. I would just like to read more queer voices both in author and in protagonist general. So that will be something that I would like to focus on this year. But, you know, my goal is 100 books, but it will be more than that, I'm sure. I'm working with more publishers. I have more NetGalleys. I think I'll be reading a lot more fantasy this year, which is just something I've been really interested in. But anyways, those are all my fun stats for the year. I just think it's always super interesting. As far as YouTube goes, my channel launched in July, late July. I have 201 subscribers, which I'm thrilled about. I think this year my goal would be to hit 1,000 subscribers. That could be easy, that could be hard. It really just depends on the content I'm putting out. I would like to start doing 2 videos a week, just because I think that that's fun and I'm more drawn to YouTubers that do that. And I would like to host my own sprints this year. So that will be something I'll do in the meanwhile, start thinking about that. But I've just loved being on YouTube, you guys. It's been so fun for my reading life and I can't wait to continue to grow here. I am excited this year. I'm gonna do some fun challenges and secret TBRs. I'm excited for readathons and to do vlogs. Like, there's just so much stuff here that I am very excited for and I can't wait to continue to grow. So with that being said, if you like this content, please subscribe because it does help me grow my channel and it means the world to me. Anyways, until the next video, I will not be filming until the 15th. Again, I'm giving myself a little bit of a break, but you will see me again on Sunday the 15th with a new video. And until then, see you later, friends.